This is the all-new Glycerin 23. It's now an 8mm drop shoe. It's got a new outsole pattern, a new triple jacquard wrap knit. But will any of this make a difference? Or is this just another Glycerin? Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys about the Brooks Glycerin 23. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Brooks sent to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Brooks Glycerin 23, and let's start with the specs. This is a 38mm stack height shoe with an 8mm drop this year compared to the 10mm drop last year. And because of that 8mm drop, we're getting 30mm of stack height in the forefoot, or 2mm more than last year. Now we do have the same midsole foam that we saw last year, the DNA Tune midsole, which is a combination of two different densities of foam. The white stuff is the softer, cushier stuff, and that's around the periphery of the shoe where you're going to be landing, especially if you're a heel striker. And then there's that yellow foam, which is a little bit more firm, a little bit more bouncy. So as you're pushing off into the next stride, you're giving a little bit more to push off of so it doesn't feel mushy when you're landing. Now, we have the same technology or same concept year over year, but we do have an updated design, which is going to match more of what we're seeing in the design language that we're getting in the Glycerin Max 2 or in the Glycerin Flex. And the best way that I could describe the new design language is like it's fish gills, where there are these cutouts in the white, softer outer layer of foam that let you see into the more firm yellow layer underneath. And there's kind of this peekaboo effect. The heel bevel that we're seeing is the same heel bevel design that we've seen in the Glycerin Flex, and we're also seeing a very similar type of outsole pattern in terms of the rubber that they're using and how much rubber that they're using. We're getting that very thick application of rubber that we saw in the Flex, and there's plenty of it in the Glycerin 23, which indicates that this is a shoe that's intended for a high amount of durability. There are some flex grooves cut into it to help make it feel a little bit more flexible, but of course it's not going to be quite as flexible as we've seen in the Glycerin Flex, which has many more grooves and cutouts in the foam itself. Moving to the upper, that's where we got that triple jacquard wrap knit. And as much as I'm kind of poking fun at the terminology used here, I do really like the material that they've used in the upper. It kind of has like the material properties of knit in terms of it's being really soft, it's very flexible, and it feels really nice on foot. But I think that rather than a traditional knit that can feel a little bit imprecise for a lot of different kinds of feet, we're getting a lot of structure and strength in the material that they're using. It reminds me a lot of the material that we saw last year in the upper of the Glycerin 22, but I did really like the material that they used there. The only complaint that I would have about it is that it's a little bit on the thick side, so in summer months it's going to feel a little bit warm, but otherwise it's a very comfortable upper to be in. I went with my usual regular running shoe size, and that worked out really well for me. Plenty of room all throughout the shoe in the Glycerin 23. And I think across all the key models in the Brooks lineup, fit is something that Brooks does a really good job of very consistently. And if you do need something that has a little bit more space in it, the Glycerin 23 is available in a wide and extra wide. And Brooks has gone to great lengths to make this shoe feel really plush and comfortable. There is a overly stuffed tongue, lots of padding here, and all throughout this heel cup there's just so much puffiness, a lot of memory foam type of foam that's in here, and it's finished off with some knit material that ends in a pull tab on the heel. The heel itself has quite a bit of structure in it. It goes all the way around the heel, and it also goes up very tall, almost to the way top of the heel cup. So there's a lot of cup to hold that heel and keep it in place. Altogether, this shoe comes in at a respectable weight for the max cushion category. And in this category, I don't really worry too much if a shoe is on the slightly too heavy side. And for me, my general cutoff for what I think is good in a max cushion category is about 300 grams. And that's exactly where this shoe comes in at a stated weight of 300 grams or 10.6 ounces. Now that we talked about what this shoe is like on paper, let's talk about what it's like on the road. The Glycerin 23 feels like a Glycerin. And I think for Glycerin fans, especially longtime Glycerin fans, that's gonna be really good news. I enjoy the updated visuals of the shoe. I think this is one of the best looking Glycerins that Brooks has ever made. And the shoe just exudes comfort in a lot of different dimensions. I love the choice of materials that they use for the upper. It's very comfortable and soft. And I feel like this shoe has some of the softest step-in comfort that I've experienced in a long time. So when I'm just standing or walking around in the shoe, I'm really enjoying the level of plushness that there is in the shoe. But for running, I'd say the Glycerin 23 is still a Glycerin. And again, for longtime Glycerin fans, that's going to be great news. But for me, as someone who's not been a core Glycerin user, I feel like the Glycerin is still, when running, a little bit more firm than I'd like for a max cushion shoe to be. The heel drop, even though it's changed from 10 millimeters to 8 millimeters, it still feels like it's a 10 millimeter shoe, if not taller. And I feel like it's a more stabilized experience than I want from a neutral shoe as a neutral shoe lover. And mainly I'm feeling that in the torsional sense. I feel like I'd like for my foot to be able to twist a little bit more, but I feel like there's a bit of lockdown happening with some rigidity through this midsole that's preventing my foot from kind of moving how I would like to. Now, I think that that also translates to a sensation that it's preventing a lot of people from over-pronating, and it also may provide a lot of predictability in the foot strike. So for core Glycerin users, I think that's going to be a plus, but for people who haven't been liking the Glycerin in the past, I think that you're still going to be experiencing a lot of those things that you found to be a little bit kind of a conflict in terms of the way you want to be able to run. And as the Glycerin 23 now stands, I feel like it's kind of quote unquote good medicine for really tired legs. If you're the type of person that for your recovery runs or for your double run days reaches for a slightly stabilized shoe, if not an outright stabilized shoe, then I feel like the Glycerin could be the kind of shoe that you're looking for. But overall, at the end of the day, I think that the Glycerin 23 doesn't represent a drastic change from the prior version. So for Glycerin fans, good news, they didn't mess it up. Now let's wrap up this video by going over the buying guide, and we'll also discuss some alternatives. The Brooks Glycerin 23 is a max cushion shoe that does a good job of balancing comfort, stability, and durability. It's a shoe that I'd reach for when I'm running on tired legs and I want a little bit of motion control to help me get through those extra miles. And it continues to be a shoe that I highly recommend for my bigger, taller friends. It's available now for a price of $175, which is $10 more than it was last year. And I think that you have no one but the Tariff King to thank for that price increase. If you want to save a little bit of money, you can definitely go back to the Glycerin 22 because that shoe is not substantially different from the Glycerin 23, and it's available on sale now for a price of $115. Now, in addition to the Glycerin 22, the Glycerin 23 has two other competitors within Brooks that a lot of people are probably going to be considering at the same time. And these are all brand extensions of the Glycerin. This is the Glycerin Flex, which we've been talking about, and this is the Glycerin Max version 2. And I think the way that I would look at these two shoes is the Glycerin Flex is almost 2 ounces lighter than the Glycerin 23, and it has this really flexible midsole. And I think put together, I think you have a much more neutral feeling shoe and a shoe that feels a lot peppier. I don't know if it's the way that the foams were formulated that's different, or if it's just the fact that there's these pods on the bottom of the shoe that change the way that the foam responds, or maybe it's just the drop. But whatever it is, this shoe feels a little bit more peppy. And then with the Glycerin Max 2, I would understand it as a maxier version of the max cushion of the Glycerin 23. So I feel like if you think of the Glycerin 23 as being kind of like the standard Glycerin, which is stable but comfortable and durable, then I think the Glycerin Flex is a slightly faster version, and the Glycerin Max 2 is a slightly more cushioned, more chill version of the shoes. Now the Glycerin Flex comes in at $170, which is $5 cheaper than the Glycerin 23, but I feel like it's probably a little bit expensive as well for what you're getting in that shoe. And then the Glycerin Max 2 comes in at $200, which I think is, for what you're getting in the Glycerin Max 2, for me as someone that's not a core Glycerin fan, it just feels way too expensive. But for someone who is a Glycerin diehard and wants something that's even more glycerin-y than the Glycerin, that $200 may make some sense for you if you're looking for something that's like ultimately more comfortable than even the Glycerin 23 is. But now let's take a look at some other shoes that are outside of Brooks to see where the competition stacks up. And then the first shoe that I'll think about is from ASICS, is the Nimbus 28. Pretty much every time I talk about the Glycerin, I'm talking about the Nimbus, and every time I'm talking about the Nimbus, I'm talking about the Glycerin. These two shoes have a lot of similarities, and they're attracting the same runners by doing a lot of the same things. We have very comfortable uppers, we have very comfortable midsoles that are a little bit more firm than I'd ideally prefer, and there's very plush heel cups in here with knit material that is finished in a pull tab on the back. Now, the Nimbus 28, I think, went through a lot of changes over its last version, and I'm really liking what they did here. It's a much lighter shoe. It's a much peppier shoe. Not that I always need my Max Cushion shoes to be peppy, but I feel like I'm getting a lot of best of both worlds when I'm talking about a shoe that I can run very comfortably in, but also can do some regular everyday work as well. I feel like it suits me and my foot strike and the way that I run a lot better than the Glycerin 23. The Nimbus 28 comes in at $170, which I think is also experiencing a tariff inflation. And then the other shoe that I want to talk about is another shoe that I think I pretty much always talk about when I'm talking about the Glycerin. This one comes from New Balance. This is the 1080. I know they're on 1080 version 15 now. New Balance hasn't sent that one for me to review, so I'll talk about the 1080 version 14. And I do feel like there's a lot of similarities happening in these two shoes, and they're trying to attract the same runner by doing the same things. There is a nice level of bounciness to this foam, but there also is a little bit of stability through some firmness and density in the foam as well. It's also got a very cushioned heel cup, and it's a shoe that has a little bit more stack height than a regular daily trainer might. I think for me right now, I would probably pick between these two shoes based on price. The 1080 version 14, because it is last year's shoes, normally retails for $165. But if you can still find them in your size, you can get it for as cheap as $90. So I feel like that's the shoe that I would probably pick up, and then you can run in that shoe for a while. And when you're ready for an update, then the Glycerin 23 might be on discount. So those are my thoughts on the Glycerin 23. Let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today. Or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?